Hello there and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk to you about my 2020 Big Books Reading Challenge. So I've seen this challenge on a couple of other booktubers I follow, and I thought I have a lot of big books on my shelf as well, which I'm never reading. So 2020 is going to be the year where I'm gonna focus more on them and then try to read one a month. So I have 12 here I want to talk to you about. Let's get into the books. These books are so thick, I could not even hold them all up for a proper thumbnail. But I have 5 fantasy books on this list. I have 4 historical fiction, I have 1 nonfiction, and I have 2 contemporaries. So let's start with the first one. I'm gonna start with the nonfiction read. So the nonfiction book I have is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. I bought this a few years ago when the movie came out, I think, and I've been meaning to read it ever since. I think he is such an amazing person, and what he did with his life and what he fought for in South Africa is just, it's absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to learn more about him. Then let's take the contemporaries. Both of these span some decades, but I consider them as contemporaries. And one of them is A Strangeness in My Mind by Orhan Pamuk. I bought this on a whim at the bookstore, so I never heard of the author nor this book, but ever since he creeps up and I see his other books everywhere, so I think he's pretty good. He's from Turkey, and in this book he writes about this guy who is a street vendor in Istanbul. He goes to this wedding where he glimpses the face of a young girl and he falls in love. So he writes these love letters for many years, I think 3 years or something like that, and then they decide to elope. But as they elope, he realizes that the woman he eloped with is not the woman he saw at the wedding. So what can he do? He's a really upstanding guy, an honorable man, so he decides to marry this woman. So, and then we go on from there, I think, and how he lives his life with this choice he made, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm going to love it. So I haven't read any books set in Istanbul or Turkey, so I'm excited to read this one. It's quite thick. This was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2016, and the other one is as well a finalist for the Man Booker, so let's get into the next one. Then I'm going to read, finally, after many years spent on my shelves, A Little Life. I don't need to introduce this a lot because this has been on BookTube, and I think I'm one of the last people to read this. The reason why I put this off is, of course, its length, but also because I hear this is a very sad book and it makes almost everyone cry. So, I don't know about that, but I think everyone praises it and everyone says it's an amazing, amazing read. And now let's get into the historical fiction books. And the first one is The Crimson Petal and the White by Michelle Faber. I picked this up because I think Jen Campbell praised this book a lot. She really likes Michelle Faber, and I thought I'm gonna give it a go. This one has also an interesting premise. It's set in Victorian London. So I have read several books set in Victorian times, but most of those were written by actual Victorian authors. This one paints a different picture of that era because it's very brutal and very realistic, according to reviews, of course. It follows a 19-year-old prostitute and her trials and tribulations. She wants to be rich and famous, I think. So I'm pretty interested to see how this goes. I think it's gonna be a good one. And I don't read a lot of historical fiction as of late, and I'm really interested to get back into that genre. So I think I'm gonna like this one as well as the other ones coming up. The next one is The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. Now, this is going to be my first Barbara Kingsolver. As far as I know, she's pretty well known within her genre and her books are quite popular. I picked this one up because, again, this was praised by some booktubers I follow. This starts out in 1959, where a priest takes his wife and daughters to the Belgian Congo on a mission. This is told from the perspective of the wife and the 4 daughters. And I don't know much else about it, but I heard good things. I heard though that the last parts are not as good as the first, but I'm willing to give it a go and see how it goes. And if it goes well, I'm definitely gonna pick up more Barbara Kingsolver in the future. The next one on my list is Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. I picked this up ever since the Netflix series came out, and I have never watched the series because I have not read the book. So next year is gonna be the year where I'm actually gonna read this book and then I'm gonna watch the series. I love Margaret Atwood. I have read her other book, The Handmaid's Tale, of course, and I'm watching that TV series as well. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one. This one is set in 1843 and we follow Grace, who is in prison. She is convicted for her involvement in the murder of her employer, I think, one servant or housekeeper and the mistress of her employers. So she's in prison, and then we have this doctor, psychologist, who's trying to help her figure out what happened because she doesn't remember. So I think the whole thing of this book is about, did she do it or did she not do it? So what happened? I picked this up also because this reminds me of one of my favorite books, which is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. That one is based on a true story, and it is about the last woman sentenced to death in Iceland. So I think I'm gonna enjoy this one, even though maybe these two are complete different, but they're both about women who have been convicted of murder. So I guess there's a common thread there, but I'm looking forward to getting to this one and then finally watching the series. And the last one of the historical fiction ones, and the biggest book I own, is Cathedral of the Sea by Ildefonso Falcones. I picked this up at a used bookstore at some point, and I think I read the first few pages and it seemed interesting. This book actually reminds me of Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth, because they're both revolve around the building of a cathedral. This is set in 14th century Spain, and I think it deals with a lot of different topics, among which, for example, witchcraft and the Inquisition. This follows our main character's journey from slave to nobleman as well. So I think it's going to be, I mean, it sounds interesting and it deals with a lot of interesting topics, and it's set in Spain in the 14th century, so I don't know a lot about Spain in the 14th century. And of course it's the Inquisition and the witchcraft, which I think pulls me in mostly. I hope it's going to be better than Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth, because I found that a bit dated in certain themes, so let's see how it goes. Then we are finally at the last 5 fantasy books, and the first of those is Arcadia by Ian Pierce. I picked this up because Jen Campbell is really recommending it a lot, and she says it's amazing and I trust her opinion. This is some sort of portal fantasy, I believe. It is set in the 1960s, where in our own world a girl goes into this cellar in this professor's house and she enters another world, which is very sunny. I don't know much else about it. And she doesn't know if she wants to go back. And then in the third world, there's this mad scientist guy who tries to prove that time doesn't really exist. And then these 3 worlds kind of collide, and I don't know what happens. But I'm kind of intrigued. I haven't read a lot of portal fantasies, and I just trust Jen Campbell's opinion. So let's see how this will go. The next book is also another mass market paperback, and it is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I will definitely pick this up only because everyone says you should if you're into fantasy, and the story is amazing as well. So this is a coming of age story. It is about this boy who becomes the most popular wizard in this world, and we follow him from childhood through his teenage years, and then when he comes into his power and into his own. So pretty excited for this one. Then I have The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. This is book 1 of the Night Angel trilogy, and in this one we follow a young man who decides to become a great assassin. And great assassins don't have any friends, they only have targets, or so it says in the cover. Anyway, I heard about Brent Week's books, and as I'm getting more into adult fantasy, I decided to pick up one of his series. And this is the one I landed on. So I think I'm going to enjoy it, and if so, I think he has more series I will definitely pick up in the future. Then I have the first book in a series by one of my favorite authors, and it is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. And this is book 1 of his Mistborn series. Now, I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson. I have read his Reckoner series. It's a young adult superhero fantasy kind of series. I didn't really like it, but I have read the first 2 books in the Stormlight Archive series, and I was absolutely mind blown by them. So I have ever since wanted to pick up his other series, Mistborn. I know I'm going to love this one because Brandon Sanderson is absolutely amazing in world building and in magic systems. And then the last book on my list is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I have been introduced to Robin Hobb by BookTube, I think. A lot of people enjoy these books because she writes, she has a lot of series in the same universe called The Realm of the Elderlings. This is book 1 in her second series in this Realm of the Elderlings. This series is the Life Ship Trader series. Everyone says you should read them in order because they're all kind of interconnected, even though this is the one which is, I think, least connected to everything else, because this follows a complete other set of characters. The first series is the Farseer trilogy, where we follow a young boy, Fritz, who is the bastard. He's taken to court to live as the bastard son of a prince, and then he has some magical abilities. He becomes an assassin, and then he's kind of important to the plot and to the happenings of this world. Now this series is about ships which are alive, I guess, in a way. I don't know, but it's really, I really enjoy the Farseer trilogy. I have yet to read the last one of those, but next year I will definitely start with these Life Ship Traders. I have only listened to the previous books on Audible, so I'm pretty excited to see if I'm going to enjoy the reading experience. But looking at the other books, I really like how Robin Hobb writes. She is very detailed and very slow-paced, character-focused in her books. So I think I'm gonna enjoy this series as well. So these are all the big books I'm planning to read in 2020. What do you think? Have you read any of these? I think most people have heard of these if they're into fantasy. I think these are pretty well-known books for the most part. So I'm curious to see if you have read any of these, or if you have other big books on your shelf which you're also afraid to read or scared of because of their size. Let me know which of those you're planning to pick up in 2020. And then I guess this is where I'll leave you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.